Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Cash Flow Positive. I'm your host, Kenny Bedwell, and we're going to have a special episode today. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can be a top producing property in a saturated market or unsaturated market, for that matter, without having to add quote unquote super amenities. You know, the big time amenities like the pickleball courts and the heated pools and the crazy game rooms and all the different amenities that you see people adding that they're posting on social media, and the wow properties. How can you be successful in the short-term rental space without adding all those things and where you can invest? And so what I wanted to do is bring in someone that I personally know. She is an agent and property manager based out of North Carolina. I've used her on the house I'm actually in right now. So she was my agent that represented me here. And so she's a good friend of mine. But more importantly, though, she's been in this space for a while, with short-term rentals for a while. And what she's going to dive into and share her experience on is investing in markets that you've heard of them before, but not many people are, running to these markets to invest, but how she's successful without adding all these big time amenities. So pay attention to each one of those things. And she's going to go through a few of her properties and tell you some of the tips and tricks. And you're going to learn how to be what we call strategically different and stand out without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. So without further ado, Beata, tell us more about yourself.
My name is Beata Lorinc, and I've been in the STR world. It is my 10th year, so it's very exciting. I'm a licensed real estate agent and a full-service boutique property manager. So I'm in the day-to-day trenches every single day.
Okay, cool. So you, how many properties are you managing right
now? So right now we've got 8 in the portfolio that produce about 1.3 million in annual revenue. So I say that because we don't focus on volume of doors. We focus on volume of revenue.
Okay. And why is that? I already know the answer, but I want you to tell people why that is. So,
it really just, it started off with that's the kind of portfolio we personally wanted. And those are the kinds of guests we wanted to service, those who are willing to pay for a higher end experience. It's also the kind of experience I like to have. So it's what I know and what I like to deliver. And then, of course, over time, I just realized it made my life a lot easier to be able to really focus on a smaller portfolio that produced a larger amount of revenue for both myself as well as my owner clients. And then we were able to provide what I think is arguably a better guest experience. So I just think it's overall more efficient and effective. And as a logistician back in my previous corporate life, that's just how I'm wired.
All right. That's awesome. Well, cool. So let's dive straight into things today. So everybody wants to know, everybody thinks today, and we see on social media the posts about super properties and having all these like amenities, and you see these crazy designs, and obviously people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on properties to try to compete in certain markets. And so here you are. First, we want to know, okay, you told me at the beginning before we hit the record button, you're in some competitive markets, but your properties are doing well and you haven't really added a lot of amenities to them. So a lot of people who follow me and know like some of the markets I've invested in have done the exact same thing. So here you are in another part of the country and you're based out of North Carolina doing kind of a similar strategy. So tell us more about that. Tell us about the properties, where they're located, and tell us the story behind that.
Well, one of my favorite stories that I talked to you about a little bit before is actually a property we bought in Raleigh. And I live in Cary, North Carolina, which is just a suburb outside of Raleigh. And of course, I'm constantly being asked, because affectionately is known as the Triangle. So we've got Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, and all of the different suburbs in between. We're still in a very highly appreciating real estate market. So year over year, our houses, hopefully they continue, but they're at a pretty dramatic upward growth in terms of appreciation. So it is not unusual that folks are interested in investing in this area, because from just a pure real estate standpoint, it is a good investment. Unfortunately, like many markets that are popular, and Raleigh certainly is not the exception. I believe the last time I looked at AirDNA, there was a few thousand STRs in Raleigh proper. And that's in addition to countless hotels. And Raleigh tends to be a market where there's obviously a lot of business travel, the universities, the hospitals is what I'm trying to spit out that I couldn't think of the term. And so, it is a lot of just couples coming or very small nuclear families. So it isn't a enormous destination for what we think of as, true vacation traveling. And so most of the time, numbers don't pencil when it comes to an STR. If you want a cash flowing producing STR, and I actually ended up purchasing this place at the end of 2023 because, like a lot of people, I was selling a property that we made quite a bit of money on, and I was trying to avoid paying the tax man, or at least minimizing what I had to pay the tax man. And I had already purchased a remote to me, meaning I'm big into buying what I like to call fugly houses. Ugly. And the fugglier, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because then I could put my personal stamp on it. And so I'd already spent the first half of 2023 doing that remotely, and I've got kids at home, and I really didn't want to do another remote remodel. And I do all the design myself. I do a lot of the setup myself. So I'm very hands-on in this business. So it gets exhausting after a while. And so when I talked to my CPA literally around this time 2 years ago, he said, you really need to buy another property. Otherwise, you're going to have a uncomfortably large tax bill. And so I started looking in my backyard thinking, okay, well, it probably won't cash flow, and that's okay. But if I make money on the appreciation and I make money on the tax savings, then it'll be a good investment. I could just flip it in 2 or 3 years. And so I really went into it. Funny enough, it did hurt my ego a little bit because I had never not had a cash flowing property. That this was, I kept reminding myself, this is for appreciation, this is for tax. This is a strategic move. This is to make your life easier to do a remodel in your backyard, because I needed it to be a big remodel because we needed to put the capital into the house as opposed to the tax. So fast forward, I bought a little duplex within walking distance of NC State. And so NC State's campus, for those aren't familiar, is right in the middle of Raleigh. It's probably 2.5 miles away from what people consider the skyline version of downtown Raleigh, but still obviously in Raleigh proper. And I just had this vision because it's a little 1960s duplex with an L, right? So one 800 square foot unit faces this way and the other 800 square foot unit faces that way. These are little places. It's a little ranch. And if I show you the before photos, it screamed 1960s. And I'm really good at just making fugly places beautiful. So I went in thinking, okay, update the flooring, the painting, the bathrooms, the windows, the kitchens to make, because in my mind, I'm flipping this house in 2 or 3 years. We're just STRing it in the short term to meet all those other goals. And I thought, I have no yard. I'm in the middle of Raleigh. There's literally no grass even. How do I make this into a vacation experience? And I actually and I'm not like, I've never done an urban market before. And to be honest, I was a little nervous about it because I do traditional vacation markets where people are going to spend leisure time in a specific place. I know that market well. And I have always heard that the urban market is a definitely different beast and it's a different avatar. And I thought, well, I can either do what everybody else is doing or I could do it my way. And my way is to cater to those vacationing. And that's kind of what I created. And I doubled down on hand-painted murals. So I found a local artist, and one side of the duplex is the Wolfpack Special. So every single room in that house, literally every room, because there's only 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen. That's it. That's the entire unit. Has an iconic NC State image hand painted on a wall. And I even painted the exterior of the house black, and I put red doors and red rocking chairs. So this place is a Wolfpack haven. And then the other unit, I went into a Raleigh theme. So the living room has a beautiful oak tree with a red cardinal, which is very North Carolina. The one bedroom is the azalea room because North Carolina is really known for azalea. So it's kind of got a little bit more of that romantic, aim more toward couples / the single women coming in for different reasons. And then the back bedroom has the iconic Raleigh skyline. And I put in a fire pit with 6 Adirondack chairs. That's it. And I mean, everything is nice. I mean, we did a good bit of landscaping. We made the house look nice. It was very purposeful in terms of we're leaning into Wolfpack, we're leaning into North Carolina, we're leaning into that immersive kind of experience. But when you really dissect it from the STR standpoint with, all the folks that, we tend to hang out with and we all see the same podcast in, it has none of those features. And I am on track to exceed 100,000 this year on that property. And it's my first full year. We had a partial year last year, and in the first 9 months, so I think I launched March and ended at 74,000. And so this winter we did significantly better. And it's leaning into creating an immersive experience and standing out from the crowd in a really crowded marketplace. And then I do hospitality really well. And so when you read my reviews, it's this cycle that perpetuates themselves. I communicate well. I make people feel welcome from the minute they book all the way through their experience. So then they leave great reviews, which then perpetuates the cycle. And consistently, all I hear is it's comfortable. It was, the location's fantastic. Could I have replicated this if we weren't walking distance? Likely not. So the key was we're less than a half mile to campus. I don't think I could have had these same results just even a mile away. But when you find the right property, I think you can lean into creating a comfortable, immersive type of experience without necessarily doubling down on the traditional STR amenities that we all know of and are study, and they make sense at other properties. But in this case, really, and I put significant money into this house, but the money I put into was truly the flip remodel that I'll more than get back on the forced appreciation and the forced equity in the home. But in terms of the actual pure STR setup, it's kind of basic.
Yeah, that's really cool. Let's dive into the numbers real quick, if you don't mind. So what did you buy this? So it's 2 units, right? So a duplex,
yeah,
right?
So it's one property on one lot, but it technically is an A side, B side.
Okay. So what did you buy it for?
$650-ish. Shoot, I'm a little embarrassed that I don't remember the exact number.
That's fine. 650-ish. All right. So 650-ish. And the total, are you renting out both units separately or renting out together?
No. Well, yes and no. So I'm doing the parent-child thing, but 85% of the time I'm renting it as the total unit, which was my original intention. Occasionally I rent out what you call the children separately, but just because of the way the yard is, it's not like a side-by-side duplex would allow you to have kind of segregated yards. This doesn't. It kind of has more of a shared courtyard. So anyway, the short answer is I'm renting them as all 3 options, but about 85% of the time it rents as one total.
One total, yeah, for the size. Okay. Revenue for the whole entire thing, just a little over 100K, something around there.
That's what we're on track to do this year.
But the bigger question though is what did you put into the property? Like in terms of,
I probably put, construction cost about $200,000 into the remodel.
Okay, gotcha. Now, with appreciation and everything, what do you think it's worth today after the renovation?
In Raleigh, and given its proximity, and with PNC Arena, which is called something different now, I can never keep track, but they're expanding that entire thing. I'd be shocked that I couldn't sell it for $1 million today.
Wow. Okay. So you've got some equity in it. Yeah.
And that's like I said, I started off this conversation of this particular decision, although all of my other properties are like cash flow is one of my number one goals. This one actually was the opposite. And I kind of didn't think I thought I would have to carry this house for a few years, and blessedly I'm covering all my costs. Like I can't say that it's an enormous moneymaker, but where I will absolutely make money is when I sell this house and the appreciation. and it's covering its costs. So I'm thrilled with it at this point.
That's awesome.
And the best part is, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but my costs are minus my exorbitant mortgage on this particular property with the current interest rates. What I love about this property is I don't have landscaping costs. My utility costs are almost negligible because it's such a small property in terms of like with no amenities. My cleaning fees don't cost me a lot. I don't have a ton of setup fees. I don't have to replace a lot of things. So my expenses for the year are significantly less than in other homes that my purchase price might have actually been a bit less and I'm making similar numbers, but my expenses are significantly higher. So that was kind of a happy surprise that I'll be honest, I didn't actually count on early on, is that the expenses on this place, like I said, minus my pity payments, are actually one of my lowest of my portfolio.
That's awesome.
And it's relatively easy to run. We turn it really fast, really frequently. And because we don't have all those amenities to reset, it doesn't take a lot of time or effort, or there's not a lot of replacement costs.
Yeah, keeping it really simple but focusing on, so obviously operations is key, but you mentioned location. I think that was important. Proximity. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, like the style and the design and a few key pieces in the property, like the murals, are really what.
To me, that's key, I think. In this particular property is the mural. The immersive experience that the murals created is what made this property stand out from the literal thousands of other options they have.
And it's near NC State. So your guest avatar, families visiting, for graduation, maybe football games. And am I missing anyone else? Maybe a business trip or educators traveling for business, like anyone else, like in terms of like guest avatar for this particular property?
I would say it's 50-50 between people associated with the university. So right now we're big into the college or the freshman orientations. So literally the folks I had to check out this morning, they came in for 3 days with their incoming freshmen. What I'm seeing a lot more that I wasn't really banking on is that people just traveling to Raleigh that want the bigger space, because I know this is your wheelhouse in terms of when we talk about saturated markets, but at bedroom count, what's saturated? So bedroom count 2 and under in Raleigh, when you look at the number, it's explosive. But when you look at the bedroom count 4 and over, I think there's 150, maybe. And so what I capture is I end up capturing groups. They're coming in for funerals, they're coming in for weddings, they're coming in for baby showers. I mean, pretty much anything you can think of that is an event that they're coming in for. And I'm actually offering them an interesting, different type of experience, because it won't be right for everybody, is that they can share the space with people they know, but they actually get 2 individual units. So I've gotten, hey, grandma and grandpa came with their adult kids, but one person needed to work remotely while the other part of the group just wanted to hang out. So the person that worked remotely stayed in one side and had some peace, and everybody hung out in the other. Or you're traveling with, different versions of extended family, and they don't necessarily all want to be under one roof, but they wanted to be together. So this offers them the opportunity to have 2 separate living spaces, but they could come together and hang out by the fire pit, or they could, so I think I'm only aware of one other duplex that allows people to rent the entire unit. So I think that's the other thing that was key in this particular property, is offering something that very few to no one else is offering. And in this case, a shared property with distinct individual spaces that people can rent.
Gotcha. Okay. I like that.
So again, stand out in a crowded marketplace by having some differentiators, and those differentiators don't always have to be STR amenities.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's looking at the data and understanding, the guest avatar, the demands, what the supply levels are. All these things can be leveraged to create your moats or your differentiators so that you do stand out in these quote unquote saturated markets. I've always said like markets aren't saturated, bedroom counts are. And I think this just like further proves that point. So
And not only, and I'll take it one step further, I think not only bedroom counts, but specific type of units, right? So you go to somewhere like, I don't know why it popped in my mind, Myrtle Beach, right? That most people, when they think of Myrtle Beach beach market, they think of condos. Well, I don't know that market very well, but I have to believe if you had a single family home in Myrtle Beach, you would stand out because there's literally thousands of condos. So to me, one of the other things I did in Raleigh, I just happen to have like the way the house sits is I have a really big parking lot in the front, which is another differentiator in downtown Raleigh because I could park 6 cars in off street parking, which to your point is a big deal downtown. But then the house sits really far back, which is interesting. And it had several really large old trees. Well, in my mind, when I first saw it, the first thing I thought of was urban retreat. That kind of was in my brain. So I was like, okay, well, again, in Raleigh, we're filled with concrete and we're filled with very stereotypically urban glass, steel, that kind of vibe. Well, I went the total opposite. I added wood elements. I took out all the concrete walkways and I built wooden pathways. So if you look at the pictures of the unit, I brought in a lot of warmth. I doubled down on the trees that I have on the property, even though there's not many, and I literally don't have a single blade of grass. But I created this element of, and I don't even use those words urban retreat, but that was what was going through my head. So then when I set up the decor and I set up the design, I purposely went against the grain and moved away from that modern urban type of design because Raleigh's prolific with it. So why would I want to be like everyone else and try to stand out there? I could stand out by being my own man, sort of in a, so that's another way you can stand out in a crowded marketplace is to just do the unexpected. Most people in urban markets expect that kind of urban vibe. And I doubled down and went. So I'm sure there's plenty of people who like that vibe that won't stay at my place. But obviously, there's enough people that maybe don't prefer the urban vibe, but they're coming to an urban area for whatever reason they need to, and they feel more comfortable at my place. So you can stand out in a very crowded marketplace in lots of different ways that don't even necessarily have to cost big bucks. I'm always a big believer in see what your competition is and see where you can be different, because different is what's going to help you stand out, and standing out is what's going to get you a disproportionate amount of the bookings.
Yeah. Riches in the niches. I love it. I love it. Okay. So that's the NC State House. You have other properties around Raleigh too, right?
No, not around Raleigh.
Oh, okay. Where
Just
are
the
they?
house I live in.
Just the house you live in. Okay. So where are the other properties that you either manage or that you own?
So I manage a property in Pinehurst. So that's about an hour south of Raleigh. So that's home of American Golf for those that aren't familiar.
That's
And
more
that's a
like
really
Fayetteville, right?
it's like Fayetteville's kind of halfway. No, Fayetteville's kind of off to the side actually. But Pinehurst is an old town. Like, fun fact is that probably 3 years ago now. So the town council decided to double down and decide that they wanted to ban short-term rentals and went on a proverbial witch hunt. And that was all kinds of fun because at the time I did own a very large property in Pinehurst, which I then sold because I didn't want to deal with it, frankly. But one of my owner clients still owns there, and we've been managing that house 4 years now. And so what was interesting about Pinehurst is it's actually one of the first towns in America that started STRing, because it was actually built and created for the wealthy New Yorkers to be able to go down south to golf when it got too cold in New York. So they came to North Carolina to golf, and they all built their cottages. And I put that in quotation marks because some of these are truly like mini mansions. They're anything but cottages, at least the way I think of cottage. And so they were very enterprising gentlemen back in the day. And they said, well, if we built this extra house and we're only using it a couple weeks a year, I might as well rent it to my friends and let them use it some of the time. So I learned that little bit of history because as a town that's actually built on tourism, it was fascinating to those of us in the industry that they really they double down on working to ban the short-term rentals. So,
Did they actually ban them or what happened?
well, North Carolina is interesting because statewide you kind of can't, but there is enough leeway in the local laws that they can, but we can sue them. So it's this gray area where the statewide laws, in theory, supersede the local laws. But unless you force the local law to be enforced by the state law, the local law stands. So technically, yes. Technically, they were forced to grandfather in anybody operating. I want to say it was, I think 22 is the. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember, but we were well before that point, so I didn't pay attention to the date exactly. But in theory now, and they still actively look for them. If you were to buy a new property in Pinehurst today and you did not start before the magical date, they will send you cease and desist letters and harass you in all kinds of fun and exciting ways. So technically, they've succeeded. Um, so that is the interesting part about this industry is that the law can be on your side, but if you aren't able to follow through or to sue to get the law to be on your side, you can de facto end up being put in these positions. So it is fascinating to be a part of. But that house also, it's I was the buying agent when my owner client bought that house, and proximity was one. It's walking distance to the village of Pinehurst with all the shops, restaurants. You can walk to the brewery. You can actually walk to the resort. And that one has an amazing swimming pool. But again, what the differentiator is it's three little houses. So there's one main house that's a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. And then there's 2 additional tiny properties. And again, we over and over again see groups coming and they actually love that they can be on the same property and be together, but be separate. And we're the only property in Pinehurst that's set up that way. And we do incredibly well in that property. And obviously we've got a bunch of things going for it. The proximity, the swimming pool helps. There's not a ton in Pinehurst, but I would argue one of the additional big things is that it has a completely different layout and is able to serve a unique crowd that nobody else is serving. So that's something that I really, over and over again, I find. I actually have an oceanfront that I manage in Surf City on Topsail Island that I used to own. I actually sold 5 years ago now, but I kept management ever since. And again, oceanfront is not that unique on an island, but what's unique about that is the way the house sits. We literally double the covered outdoor space because the house sits so high up. We created an entire covered oasis underneath the house because the house itself is only 1,100 square feet. But we fenced in a yard. We have all of this shade. You still see the ocean. And people love coming to that space because they essentially have 1,100 square feet inside with gorgeous ocean views, but then they have another 12 to 1,300 square feet of covered outdoor oceanfront fenced in space that they can use for their families, for their kids, for their dogs. So we get a ton of people with dogs because I can count on 2 hands how many people have fenced in yards that are also oceanfront. So there's lots of different, so the moral of the story that I keep saying is no matter where you're at, stand out, offer something, figure out what people are offering and then offer them something else.
Yeah, I think it ties really into figuring out knowing the guest avatar, knowing what demands that people would have and leaning into those underserved demands. I don't think it's unless you know an area really well. If we're investing, most people listening to this are investing in markets that are away from them that they might not really know that well. And so it's hard for a lot of people to figure it out. But I encourage people to go to the market you're buying in, be a tourist, experience it for yourself because you will see and you'll pick up on things, where it's wow, like you said, Topsail Beach, dogs are allowed. I noticed we were there 2 weeks ago and people walking their dogs up and down, and I'm like, these houses are tiny. Like, where are the dogs? Like, it's like people aren't catering towards pet friendly there. Like, that's a differentiator, and fenced in yard, the shade and all that stuff. And then you stack these things on top of each other, and it creates a space that can help differentiate you and make you a top producer in a particular market, without having to just over amenitize with a bunch of different amenities, because you just don't know what's going to work.
Here's here's one of my little secret sauces that cost you virtually no money, that I've been doing for a decade. And it was really only because this is how I wanted to travel. And it's what made sense to me. And I know at least 50% of your listeners are going to turn their nose up at this one, but it works. I offer what I call, and you kind of have to explain it to people. I offer the pay it forward kitchen policy. I call it a pay it forward kitchen policy. And when I first started, I started on Topsail Island. I started back in the day where literally no one was offering sheets and towels, let alone toilet paper, salt, and pepper. So I can actually legit say that I was in probably the first 5 people that offered toilet paper on that island, and I'm still proud of that fact. Because as someone who, when they travel in, I don't know what you do when you first walk in the house, but I'm usually running in, going straight to the restroom, and if there's no toilet paper, that's a really unfortunate scenario for a young woman. But in my mind, like, I don't want to travel with shampoo and conditioner and toilet paper and paper towels and sheets and like the whole 9 yards. And I know most of us don't do that anymore. However, we are offering fully stocked kitchens. We're offering blenders and waffle makers and God knows what else, but an empty pantry, right? So we spend all of this money on pots and pans and high-end knives and cutting boards. But if anyone is only there for 2 or 3 nights and they want to make a meal, guess what they have to buy? Olive oil, salt and pepper, different seasonings, just bare basics that when you're at home, you just need your 3 key ingredients and you're going to throw together for a meal. But if you come to an STR with a completely empty pantry, by the time you buy all of that stuff, most of the time you're like, shoot, I could have gone out to eat instead of playing this pantry. And then worse, you're either taking it home with you because it gets cleaned out, or you know that someone's going to throw it away. And I don't know, I mean, maybe not everybody's wired this way, but I can't stand the idea of wasting stuff. So in my mind, I want to be able to go somewhere for 2 or 3 nights. And if you're offering me pots and pans and knives, then please offer me cooking spray and a little bit of olive oil and at least the most basic of seasonings so that I can make a quick meal. And most don't. My every refrigerator you always go into an NC Escapes property. So that's what my brand is for my property management, North Carolina Escapes. Our refrigerator is filled with ketchup, barbecue sauce, mustard, and it's half used. We tell people that up front. I basically say we have a pay it forward kitchen policy. So when you use something up, please buy. So we do not restock. I tell people up front, I do not guarantee any one specific item. Please come and check the stock before you make your grocery run. You'll be very pleasantly surprised. And our motto is give a little, get a lot. And people love it. And if you go through my reviews, and I was actually telling someone the other day that, was it last year or 2 years ago, at WealthCon, when you were set up kind of off to the side and you taught people how to take all of your reviews and like feed them into ChatGPT, with those prompts. Literally one of the biggest things that came up was our pay it forward policy and our stock kitchen over and over again among almost anything else because of that reason. No one wants to like make a basic meal and buy the pantry basics, but they won't mind replenishing the olive oil if the 7 other things were there. So I literally don't replenish the kitchen stock. My guests do. And what we do is quarterly is we go through and make sure if anything is past its prime or expired or just doesn't look right, we make sure to get rid of it. And every once in a while, like if we're running really low, I'll do a once or twice a year kind of a pantry restock. Or if I just feel like things just need to look better or newer or whatever, I'll kind of throw some things away and restock. But generally speaking, it literally feeds itself. but that's one of the things that we get complimented on the most, and it costs us virtually nothing.
That's awesome. Does that include like pantry items, like cereals or anything like that? Or do you guys toss all that?
So for us, everything goes. If I open, I'm actually sitting at one of my STRs right now. If I open the kitchen cabinets, I could show you what's in there, but I have no idea. I only arrived an hour ago. I didn't check yet, but there could be, there's more often than not, there's maple syrup, there's pancake mix, and people put little clips. And the funny part is I've been doing this before COVID and I never stopped during COVID. And I'm sure there was a few people that were aghast when they came and saw that items that other people touched, but I don't know. I guess I warned people up front, and most people still just appreciated it.
People just, if they don't want to do it, they just don't use it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And if you've given them notice, like it's like, and I'd probably even like, I'm sure, I don't know if you have signs or whatever, it's like pay it, whatever, but the reality is like, yeah, if you give people heads up and, I don't know, yeah, you think about when you go to a restaurant, like you get the A1 sauce or the, like barbecue.
It's not brand new.
Yeah. And especially at restaurants, like you're not like sit down restaurants, like you don't like, you're like, it's even some of the nicer ones. You're not getting a little packet. Maybe they pour it in a little container or something, but most of the time, like a barbecue place, like you're taking the bottles that they have there and using it. So yeah, it makes sense, same thing at hotels. If you ever do like a hotel breakfast or something, like the buffets, you're using the bottles just like everybody else. So it's different with the short term. I don't think we've been programmed for short term rental hosts to think like that, especially with COVID and everything, because most people started during COVID. So that's really, really interesting.
So, but the point is that, but that's how I want to travel. So that's been the thread throughout my entire, how I set up, created my personal portfolio and those I manage for others, is I set it up the way I would want to travel. And so obviously I'm not going to attract everybody, right? But to me, I attract, riches in the niches. But my entire vibe is about, and I actually put this in my thing. So I create a home away from home experience that is up leveled and elevated. I don't do white anything. You will never see a white towel or a white linen in any of my homes, because in my mind, personally, that doesn't feel homey to me. That feels sterile to me. And again, I know that there's going to be the other evangelists who will say, I won't ever rent a place if it's not white. Which is, but the reality is not everybody wants that. So I guess I keep going back to, instead of listening to what everybody else is doing, create your own path and find your own way. Make sure that there's other people who want what you want, but chances are, if that's how you'd want to travel, chances are there's at least a handful of other people that want to travel that way. And in my mind, it's always easier to stand out by being different than trying to stand out by being the same as everybody else who's trying to stand out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like that. Well, thank you so much for sharing. So as we're kind of wrapping up here, if someone's interested in learning more about your services or consulting or the property management side, how do people get in touch with you?
They can find me at theboutiquepm.com.
So theboutiquepm.com. If you're on YouTube watching this on the Cash Flow Positive channel, there it is right there. Well, thank you so much, Beata, for being on the show. Last question for you. Ask all the guests this, put you on the spot. What is one way that hosts, it can be anything we talked about already, it can be anything new. You're a host. What's one recommendation you give to our hosts so they can cash flow positive with their short-term rentals?
Be different. I don't know how else to put it, is find a way to be different. Because in my mind, most people are looking for unique experiences. And if you're doing everything like everybody else, or there's all kinds of shopping lists out there, and people are putting out like, here's exactly how to set up my X, Y, or Z, and here's all the 30 Amazon items to put in your cart. Well, if everybody starts doing that, then I don't know, it just becomes the same thing over and over again. I think with a little bit of creativity and a little bit of chutzpah, I think anybody could could stand out and really differentiate themselves and create an amazing experience for the guests, as well as create something fun for themselves. Because I think this business can be really hard and can get to you after a while. So I think the more you can make it fun and the more you can be proud of what you're putting out there, it makes it all worthwhile.
I like that. I like that. Be different. Be strategically different. I'll put it that way.
Yes,
I've seen people
100%. Yes,
too different, and it's
that's
like,
true.
that just doesn't. No, stop. So I can.
That could be a session two. Be different, but don't be too different.
Yeah, I think it's funny because it goes back to what you said, where it's like we travel a certain way, and you're looking for certain things when you travel, and there's probably other people that would do the same thing. Really, that is different, but it's not that different. You know what I mean? Like you're not looking for places. I hate to call anybody out, but like, for example, I'm trying to get somebody on the show, really successful entrepreneur and investor, but he decided to do like Christmas themed Airbnbs, like Christmas in July Airbnbs, like, but instead of like one, he did like 5 at the same time. And when he told me about it, I was kind of like, and in the market too, I was like, what? Okay, like that's interesting. He's like, yeah.
Is it going well? I've never heard of it, so.
So like, but I mean, you think about it, it's like, yes, that's very, very, very different.
One probably would have been a great idea.
Yeah, one, and like to test it out to see, but the reality is like that's too different. That's not like your travel trends. Like, oh, when I travel, I'm looking for Christmas in July properties, year-round Christmas properties. I'm looking, that's not really a thing. And so unless you like make it like some like crazy destination resort type property Christmas,
or at one of those like quintessential little towns that is met like those hallmark towns, right? It might work there.
But this is like in a mountain market and just murals and some Christmas decor. It's like, this looks like they just forgot to take it all down. Like.
Funny you say that, because my cleaner in one of my markets sent me a picture of a different house she was cleaning. They never took down the Christmas decor, and now they made it a thing where she sent me this huge Christmas tree with 4th of July decor on it.
Oh, that's funny.
Not what I would have done, but I guess it's one way to do it.
Yeah. So be different. Just
be strategically different.
Strategically different. There we go. We'll leave it on that. Well, thanks everybody for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time on Cashflow Positive.